Hello, everyone, and welcome in today to today's live. What are we, Wednesday, June 18th already, 2025, and I'm so happy to be here with you. This is a whole new routine for me, back to doing live broadcasts. I think it's going to be a lot of fun for all of us. I'm just going to give it a moment to let some people hop on. Say hello, let me know you're here, let me know where you're tuning in from. Can I see my comments? Please be patient with me as I get used to there we go, as I get used to the whole live scene here on YouTube. It's a new endeavor. There's a bit of a learning curve, but please do say hello. Let me know where you're tuning in from, and we will dive right in. Hey, Doug from Florida. Welcome in. Nice to have you here. Hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so if you aren't up to speed with regards to the changes around here at Tamie M Coaching, for the summer, I'm taking a break with creating curated YouTube content, posting YouTube videos that you have seen. If you've been with me for any length of time, about every Friday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern, very consistently over the course of 6, 7 years, 5, 6 years it is. We're taking a break with that. And the new schedule starting next week, well, actually this coming Sunday, will be every Sunday at 1 p.m. Eastern and every Tuesday. Today's Wednesday, but starting next week will be on Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. So Tuesday and Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern for the foreseeable future. I'm going to be going live with intent to bring you value, support you by giving you some time for live Q&A with me, and also just to connect more. The curated content is, well, all good and well, and it serves, but I feel like we're lacking a little bit of actual human heart-to-heart, soul-to-soul contact. So the live videos, I think, will serve us well in that regard. Susan, welcome in. Nice to see you here. Okay, so today, what we're going to talk about is how to defend yourself against liars. How to defend yourself against liars. This is a big subject, and it's a question that I get asked often, especially coming from the realm of codependency and narcissistic abuse healing and recovery, family scapegoating abuse, the kind of experiences that many of us in this community have endured have been, to say unbelievably painful would be an understatement. And often that has to do with the ways in which we have been lied about, the ways in which we have been attacked, vilified, and scapegoated, whether that be within our family of origin from a very young age, or with our in-laws, or in the workplace, or in a social circle. It can be extremely painful to be facing down lies and distortions about ourselves, especially when people we love and care about are susceptible to the manipulation and deception, and or it serves them as and others to believe the manipulation and deception. Sometimes it's easier to believe the lies than to actually contend with the truth of the matter, the reality. Right? So this is a really common occurrence for those of us who feel that we've lived through any degree of narcissistic abuse and family scapegoating abuse, and a common question that I get. So in the spirit of answering the question, the first thing that I want to do is read to you something I wrote a number of years ago when someone reached out to me in a coaching capacity, digitally online, asking me, Cam, how do you deal with this? How do you defend yourself against people who are running around town telling all the lies and folks are believing it, right? So I wrote a post about it to address the issue. And it's one that I've posted on social media repeatedly over the years because it hits home for so many people. So I'm going to begin this dialogue with you today by reading this post in case you've never heard it. Maybe some of you have if you've been following me on social media for a while. So it begins with, someone asked me the other day, how do you defend yourself against liars? And here was my response. You don't. When you do, you give your power away. What I've learned is to walk away from them entirely which for me personally has meant walking away from the majority of my family of origin for this very reason. It's not easy, excruciatingly painful actually, but defending yourself against people determined to slander you is a colossal exercise in futility. There's a saying, when toxic people can no longer control you, they'll try to control how others see you. Usually, this is done with distortions, half-truths, lies by omission, and outright lies. When dealing with destructive narcissists, it's very typical behavior known as a smear campaign. So two things are key here. First, eliminating liars from your life, period. Absolute, outright, no contact. In my humble opinion, it's the best way to go. No one should have people in their lives who are capable of wreaking that kind of destruction anytime they choose, simply by opening their mouths. Second, healing ourselves so we can get our self-esteem to a point where we are no longer wrapped up in the opinions of others at all. It's a big key. I know my truth. I know the truth. I know who I am. I know what I have lived. I know what I have. I know what I or they did or didn't do, did or didn't say. What others think of me is none of my business. We must become independent of the opinions of others, good, bad, or indifferent. That really is the bottom line. Not easy, but essential. And you can get there. We've got to stop giving a flying bleep about what others think of us and start caring much more about what we think of us and how much we love ourselves. From that place, we attract much healthier people, much healthier circumstances, much healthier environments, and we don't have to deal with so much BS in our lives. Life is hard enough without all the added garbage, no? People don't get to lie about me or to me and stay in my life, no matter who they are. I'll say that again. No matter who they are. Period. This is non-negotiable. I don't need to defend myself. I just need them gone. One of my favorite quotes from A Course in Miracles is, "In my defenselessness, my safety lies." Here's the thing. When we invest any of our energy in darkness, we are investing in illusion. My suggestion is to love yourself enough to stay in the light. Do not engage with liars, especially if they are lying about you, ever, period. So, I wanted to start off with that. I'm going to say a quick hello before I dive in. Hi, Susan from Rexburg, Idaho. Shalom from Indiana. Sherry, welcome. Welcome in. We are not doormats, indeed. So it can be really difficult, as I started off by saying, we are on the receiving end of this kind of nonsense and insanity. And I growing up in the kind of family that I grew up in, I was on the receiving end of a lot of it. The list is long. And this sickness and the madness involved in the nature of the lies, heartbreaking, gut-wrenching, soul-destroying stuff. So I know the pain. I know the pain all too well. And for those of us who experience this growing up in a sick, dysfunctional family system, you know, dealing with narcissistic perpetrators to whatever degree, we're imprinted with this pattern, and then we go out into our adult lives and don't even realize that we're carrying this subconscious imprinting and pattern, and now we're having a repetition of this experience in our adult life, and we're wondering, like, what the hell? right? And it's because we're carrying these old wounds that need to be addressed if we want the reflection in the mirror, the pattern, the external pattern being reflected back to us to change. Because those old unresolved wounds are magnetic in nature. So I know the pain all too well. And I'm not going to say that there isn't a time ever to set the record straight, because certainly there is some points in time to set the record straight. But the issue is in our woundedness, in our, I'm going to throw some labels around. The only purpose of the labels is to help us make sense of the insanity. So in our untreated adult child syndrome, we grew up in a sick, dysfunctional family. We haven't done any work. We're suffering from untreated adult child syndrome and or untreated codependency. They each have their own lane and there's some overlap there. From that place of woundedness, untreated codependency, untreated adult child syndrome, and hi, my name is Tamie. I have been there. It's been a good part of, my early adult life, first few decades of my life there. Our desire is like, we just want to be seen and heard and understood and validated and approved of and loved and accepted. And like, why can't they hear me and why can't they see me? And we just want to get in there and control the narrative and set the record straight and be seen and heard and loved and validate, all the things, right? And it's codependent enrichment. And the more, and believe me, I learned this lesson the hard way in my mid-20s when an uncle who was a professional car thief, a convicted felon, accused me of stealing a bag of jewelry. I now understand, knowing what I know, looking back in retrospect, that was quite the conspiracy to cover his own ass for something he had done when I was 16 years old, lest it ever come to light. But the trauma that came of this accusation from this person who was higher on the totem pole than me, had more seniority and authority in this dysfunctional family system than I did, as fundamentally the youngest child, oldest grandchild, raised by my grandmother, defenseless, nobody really on my team to defend me, having been the scapegoat my whole life. The trauma of that was, I mean, I had PTSD symptoms after all of that. And the whole family continued to just prop him up, whether they believed it or not, whether they believed the lies or not. But a professional car thief his whole life, among other things, a convicted felon accused me of stealing something. And it was an incredible trauma. And I was desperate to be heard and believed that I did not, would not, could not, absolutely did not. And my biological mother, who was a very high spectrum, in my view, malignant covert narcissist who I had very little contact with, but she was good friends with this piece of work. I knew that she had a piece of information that could set this whole record straight, because part of this had to do with a piece of jewelry that she had actually given me. So I called her up and asked her if she could help me out and set the record straight. And she got on the phone and twisted that to such a degree to only amplify the lies. It was painful. It was excruciatingly painful. And that's one of many examples I could give you that I've lived with my family of origin. We're going to go a little personal today. Many of you have asked to hear my personal story. So on these lives, bit by bit, piece by piece, I'm going to share with you my personal journey so you can understand where I come from, the journey that I have traveled to get to where I am today, to be able to have taught what I have taught and continue to teach what I teach to the way that I do today. So I was desperate in my untreated codependency, in my untreated adult child syndrome, to be heard and validated and understood and believed, protected, and although there was no such thing for me in that family. No such thing. So there was this sick judgment while I'm yelling from the rooftops, "I didn't do it. I swear to God, I didn't do it. I didn't do it. Please believe." Very sick stuff, very painful stuff. He's since passed on and taken all of that to his grave. I wouldn't want his karma. I wouldn't want. In 2009, 2 of my cousins, who I loved like siblings, they were not just cousins, they were like a younger brother and sister to me, had both gotten married the year before, and they were both having their first children that year within 6 months of each other. The day had finally come where I knew that I was going to have to come out with the truth of what had gone on when I was a child. Their father had molested me from the time I was 7 till I can't remember. It was a 3, 4-year period. It stopped when there was a move on their part. The family moved from the city where we were to another city. But there was a 3, 4-year period where I was manipulated into silence, had already been cast in the role of family scapegoat. My parents, I was the perfect target for this sort of thing. My grandmother was suffering her own PTSD issues, probably CPTSD issues, had blinders on, had a high need of approval from, the family, and missed a lot of things, and he was trusted. So in 2009, the day came where I had to stand up and tell the truth about what had gone on when I was a child for no other reason. The pure motivation was to protect the next generation of children coming along because I knew that as their grandfather, he would have unfettered access to those kids. And if anything was gonna happen to them, it wasn't gonna be because I kept my mouth shut. I had kept my mouth shut and put on quite a performance. I was in so much pain and so much denial. I was lying to myself and living a lie. A lie I had been handed from the time I was 7 years old before I had any real say in the matter. So 33 years of silence comes to an end, and I disclose the truth, knowing full well in advance that I am only going to be further scapegoated, and the likelihood that I am going to be believed is not high by virtue of the position that I hold in this sick family system, by virtue of what a bully my aunt has been in my life, my whole life, by virtue of how covert and manipulative and sneaky and deceptive the uncle is, in spite of the fact that it all looks good on the outside and he's oh so respected. All I cared about was my cousins and their children, that next generation of children being kept safe. Without getting into the details don't really matter, the fallout of that was really the catalyst to major and deep healing and recovery for me. But in that fallout, I've had no contact with those cousins ever since. They've chosen to believe the lies. As one counselor said to me at one point, "It's a lot easier to believe that your cousin is a lying lapdog than your father is a pedophile." And my aunt would have said whatever it would take to cover their asses. There's question as to whether or not she was even aware before I made them aware. She would have said whatever it took to vilify me and to ensure in fact, she told me she spent 2 days spewing the most toxic, vile, disgusting insanity into my, voicemail, trying to get a reaction out of me. She could not control the situation or the conversation. And then when my cousins received the letters that I had sent, because I first sent letters to the aunt and uncle, and then the cousins would have received their copies of the letters. It all went silent, and it has been silent ever since, and that was the fall of 2000, that was November 2009. So my cousins have made a choice in terms of who and what they choose to believe. And that was a years-long grieving process. I'm not gonna lie, that was excruciatingly painful. Part of that narrative, as I understand it, is I'm the one who could not be trusted around children because I still stood up and told the truth. The fallout was such that the narrative included I was the one who could not be trusted around children. There are many more stories I could tell you, some equally as sick and painful, having to do with my biological mother, my biological father, my stepmother, another aunt and uncle in particular. So I know the pain of being lied about and not being able to control the narrative and what a dark place that can take us to. And what I know for sure is we can come through it, not just intact, but more empowered, more healed, more strong, stronger, more clear than ever. So here's the thing about that. In my very dark night of the soul season that began in the fall of 2009, and it was let me tell you, a dark night of a years-long grieving process before I was fully back to myself. That pretty much leveled me. I was surrounded by a team. I had been on my healing and recovery journey. My sober healing and recovery journey began in 2005. This August, God willing, I'll celebrate 20 years. So it was 4 years into my sober healing and recovery journey that I was dealing with the biggest lie I had been carrying, you know? I'd been unpacking for 4 years, layers of pain and drama and trauma, and then I got to this tumor in my heart that I've been carrying since I was 7. I had no idea the degree to which it kept me sick until I went through that experience. There's a saying in the recovery movement, "We are as sick as our secrets," and that is true. Because I had been surrounded in my recovery journey, my sober recovery journey, when the time came to deal with this great big ugly issue, the day I knew somehow, I always knew deep down someday that day is gonna come, sure enough it did. I was well surrounded. I had a sponsor with decades of recovery under her belt, who had a sponsor with decades of recovery under her belt. I had a therapist with not only decades of recovery under her belt, but decades of experience in dealing with these issues specifically, childhood sexual abuse specifically, this level of abuse and dysfunction specifically. I was visiting a treatment center I went multiple times, in-house, deep dive, group therapy, 2 weeks solid. I went in 2008 and in 2010. I bookended that 2009 experience with 2 weeks deep dive intensive in a treatment center specific to deal with the effects of growing up in a sick, dysfunctional family system. The family disease of alcoholism, destructive narcissism, untreated codependency, the whole bag. Thank God for that place. Anyone looking for that type of support, look for the family program. Hazelden is the original family program to treat people who are at the effect of family disease of alcoholism, dysfunction, alcoholism, addiction, etc. So the point I'm getting at is I had a village around me while I was in a fetal position, wailing like an animal in pain, going through this dark night of the soul. And thank God I did. And they were people who really knew what the hell they were talking about. And they had experience and they knew what they were doing. And their guidance helped me navigate that in a way where I came out the other side intact. Eventually, there was a healing process. If you have open heart surgery without the anesthetic, you're gonna convalesce for a while before that wound actually is healed, right? So there was a journey involved, but I was well supported, well surrounded, and because I had been on a recovery journey for quite some time, I understood that it was my responsibility to make sure that I was supported. So if this is, hitting home for you and you're struggling with the fact that you're being lied about to any degree in any situation, your character is being attacked, assassinated, your relationships are being destroyed, your reputation is being destroyed. I want to encourage you to make sure that you get support from people who actually get it and people who actually know what they're doing and what they're talking about. That it makes all the difference. So that's the first thing, is it is our number one job and responsibility to support ourselves. And then in this post that I read, how do you defend yourself against liars? You don't. You don't. Now, again, I'm not gonna say that there isn't a time to set the record straight. And it can be very wise depending on your situation. You know, I'm talking to the general public here really because this is available public on YouTube. So know that not everything I say is going to apply 100% to everyone, every time, in every situation. Some of you have children involved. You're being lied about by someone you're in the midst of divorcing, and there's a custody battle going on. Like, these are very complex, tricky, difficult, and painful situations that need to be navigated skillfully. Documenting everything. Before I came out with, outing the pedophile in the family, my team around me recommended that I confront him first, which I did. They were coming to a wedding that summer, and I called a meeting with him one-on-one. And I was a mess. He's so lucky he was dealing with me then in that place of pain and not me today. It'd be a whole other conversation if we were having it today. A very good friend of mine recommended that I record that conversation. And my sponsor at the time said, you don't need to do that. And I chose to follow the advice of my sponsor. And I'm responsible for that decision. Like, I own that choice. I had an option to record it or not. And she said, you don't need to do that. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. I don't need to do that. So I didn't. I'm going to tell you that was a mistake. Is a mistake. Because, man, would that have changed the game. Now, everything happens the way that it's meant to. And believe it or not, I have a lot of peace. It's many years later, I have done a lot of work. And I have worked with a lot of people, supporting them in their own version of a story like this. So I have a lot of peace. And I know that God's got my back. And there's more that I'm going to discuss that will impress upon you why I have the kind of peace that I have. But the reason I bring that up is be smart. Stay under the radar and document everything. Keep your ego out of it. Let them underestimate you. Let them underestimate you. Document everything. You may never use it, but if you ever need it, if it ever becomes you to use it, you'll be sure glad that you have it. Imagine had I allowed my aunt and uncle to run with the lies that they've been running with for 16 years, for a year or 2 or 3, and then sent a recording to my cousins, how that might have changed them. I pray to God nothing has happened to any of those children. We're talking about compulsion, so I'll never know. Document everything if you are in a situation to the best of your ability, and just keep a file. Keep a file. Keep a file. And keep your ego out of it. Nobody needs to know you're doing it. Stay under the radar and let them underestimate you. So where am I with that now? I go down rabbit holes. Um, have a team around you. It's your responsibility to get support. Document everything to the best of your ability. And get over on your side of the street. So, I was talking with a private client the other morning, and he is fully in the process of being scapegoated as he goes through with regards to his his um his family, like his ex-wife, his teenage children, and their little entourage as he goes through the process of the divorce. So this side of the street, the soon-to-be ex-wife is a ringleader, and he's a pretty smart, sober, recovering person, and he's got my support in the other stuff. He's working my program. So he's got a pretty level head, but every now and then, because of the nature of the lies and the fact that the kids are being pulled into all of this, it's real tempting to want to go over here. But the problem with going over here is just like being with my uncle back in the day, like whenever it was, the 90s, when that whole shit show blew up about the thief calling me a thief. Talk about projection. The level of insanity with all of that. But the problem with going over to their side of the street is we're a much better target when we're over here. We're so much easier to target. When we're over here in our own lane, minding our own business, doing our own thing, we're a lot harder to target. Now, they can run a smear campaign and they can do their thing, and I know how painful that can be. But when you're over here in your lane doing your thing, working on you, focused on your healing, your recovery, your growth, your development, making your life better, detaching from what you cannot control, surrender and accept to what you cannot control, what you can control, what you can't control. You're a whole lot harder to target. So in the first example I gave you from my life, I was completely enmeshed. I was like running in circles around here, and I was a major source of supply for all the humans. And like, what a show. That's what that was, right? And I was drinking heavily, numbing myself with cocaine, and taking Valium by the end of it. That's how painful it was. It was a life-changing, life-altering, soul-destroying shit show insanity, and I was right in like, I had to be fully medicated in order to even survive to the degree that I did. The second, as I said, when that all came up, I was 4 years into my sober recovery. I had a team around me. So I said what I needed to say with enough detachment to keep myself safe and to be able to say what I needed to say exactly how I needed to say it with the written word. And I sent letters and I stayed in my lane. And my aunt spent 2 days, something else I should have recorded, spewing the most vile insanity, desperately trying to control me and the situation and the whole thing. It was really quite something. I had 2 phones at the time, a landline and a cell phone, and she did that for 2 solid days. Really quite something. And then it went silent. And I just stayed in my lane, and I have been in my lane ever since. I have been in my lane ever since. At a certain point, about 6 months after, 4 or 5 months after, I got punched in the throat on Facebook. It was one of those babies' first. I came out with the truth in November. One of those babies was born in March. So it was his first birthday party. And I hopped on Facebook that day and got punched in the throat with a photograph of that baby's first birthday party. Children I will never get to meet. Children I will never get to meet. And the pedophile was right in the center of the whole thing. And for that 4-month period, I had been waiting, hoping that I would hear from my cousins, their spouses, the benefit of a conversation. I didn't deserve so much as the benefit of a conversation. Never mind the benefit of a doubt, right? And then I get punched in the throat with a photograph of a one-year-old's birthday party and the pedophile right in the center of the whole thing. Meanwhile, no one has reached out to me to ask me a single question. So I blocked, I can't remember, but it was well over 100 people that day. I made a decision in that moment that would never happen to me again. I was willing to do whatever it would take to protect myself from being hurt more than I had already been hurt. And I just stayed in my lane. And since then, staying in my lane has been ongoing healing and recovery work, making a move across the country, falling in love, finally attracting the love of my life, everything I have ever wanted and then some, because I so did the internal work to finally become a match to happy, healthy, lasting, amazing love. We just celebrated 10 years together, 3 years married. Amazing man I am married to. We have an incredible relationship. I've built a coaching practice that has served many thousands, hundreds of thousands, if we're going by the YouTube and social media vanity metrics, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of views on my videos, a coaching practice that has served many hundreds of people internationally, having taken my pain and processed it properly, so completely, walked the path of healing and recovery so completely that I was able to create a program where I've literally had dozens of 20 plus year veteran family psychotherapists come through my program for help with these issues in their own lives. Last year, I had 2 doctors of psychiatry work with me privately for help with these issues in their own lives. I'm a life coach, I'm not a clinician. And what every one of these clinicians said to me, what you teach is not part of our training, Tammy. So I've created a really beautiful life for myself. And you can too. So how do we defend ourselves against liars? We don't. Sometimes there's a time to set the record straight. I set the record straight when I wrote those letters telling the truth. What anybody chooses to do with the truth is up to them. It's none of our business. It's out of our hands at that point. And that's where we, like the enmeshment of untreated codependency, untreated adult child syndrome, when we're in our own lane doing our healing and recovery work, it's enmeshed. And over time, we become healthy, interdependent people, not codependent, not enmeshed, healthy, boundaried, sane, interdependent people, empowered people, able to live healthy, functional lives and actually have an impact and be of service in whatever way lights us up. Whether that's taking all the shit we've been through and turning it into gold in the service of ourselves and others, or following our bliss in some way. But your time on this planet is precious. Your life is valuable. So being in your lane, doing your thing, taking care of you, making sure you're supported because that's your responsibility, is time well spent invested in you so you can build a beautiful life for yourself versus hanging out with them on their side of the street, getting kicked, among other things. We have to remember that when we're dealing with people who land on the spectrum of destructive narcissism, we're dealing with people who live in an inverted reality. That's why all the lies and deception and manipulation, how do they lie with such ease? Well, first, do they know? Do they realize? They know. It's not whether or not they know, it's that they don't care. They don't care. They don't care. Do they know? Yes, they know. They just don't care. The difference between someone with empathy and a conscience and someone who is empathy impaired or lacking intelligence entirely. So you're dealing with someone who's, operating in inverted reality, and you can hang out in that inverted reality with them if you want. That helps mirrors. They need a scapegoat. They need a target. So if you want to volunteer for that, you can. Or you can say balls to this and walk out of that inverted reality and into a place of health and peace and sanity. I was on a mastermind call with, I'm in a pretty high level mastermind for female entrepreneurs who do work of this nature, healers, coaches, etc. And our mentor was talking about, well, big on the subject of conversation this week in particular has been the ways in which we are lied about on the internet. And she said, sometimes you're standing there and you're looking at a 6 on the floor and it's clearly a 6. You can see it's a 6. You know it's a 6. The truth is, it's a 6. But she said, someone will be on the other side looking at that and they'll see a 9. And I immediately thought of the inverted reality of the destructive narcissist. That's what it is when you are in the room with people who will say whatever it takes to cover their own ass, who have no empathy or conscience around the kind of damage that they have done. It's not whether or not they know whether or not they've hurt you. It's that they don't give a flying bleep. They can care less. Saving their own ass is far more important. Looking like the victim to your villain is more important than the truth, right? So when you're in an inverted reality and you're looking at a 6 and you know it's a 6, remember you're dealing with someone who's in that inversion. They see a 9. There's no point in arguing with them about whether or not it's a 6 or a 9. Get out of the room. Get out of the room. Unless you're enjoying it. Unless that's where you want to be. And sometimes we can't get out of the room immediately. I get that. There are circumstances, there's things need to be, it takes time. So then do what you need to do so that you can eventually get it. The truth has a vibration 1,000% more powerful than any lie ever will. Quantum physics, everything has a frequency, a vibration, a calibration in God's creation. The truth can be calibrated. It calibrates 1,000 times more powerfully, vibrates 1,000 times more powerfully. It's backed by science than a lie, which calibrates down here. Truth is up here around enlightenment at 1,000. A lie is down here around manipulation, which would be 20, 50 at best. So in the grand scheme of things, if we get the hell out of God's way and we keep our hands off the situation and we focus on ourselves and creating our own lives and staying in our lane, who do you think wins? Who do you think wins? I said it the other day, and I'll say it again. I wouldn't want their karma. I wouldn't want their. If you are being lied about, remember that you have the truth on your side. But what if others believe the lies? You still have the truth on your side. The truth is still the truth. You have that going for you. 1,000 times more powerful. Pretty powerful. I'd trust that. I trust that. So I hope that was helpful, friends. I'm going to dive into the comments here and see if you have any questions, please. I'm getting a comment here about the audio being not great. I hope that's a one-off. I'm very sorry about that. I don't know. Is that, can you guys, the audio is a bit, the things that I lived, in particular. Can you guys hear me now? Can you guys hear me now? Okay, so I don't know what happened with the audio there. I'm actually a little bit concerned that I basically just spoke for 50 straight minutes and you guys didn't get any of that. Um, and I'm very sorry about that. Susan's saying this resonated on every level. Okay, so I'm going to find out what happened with the audio, and I'm going to tell you what. If this didn't come through clearly, I'm going to talk about this subject again on Sunday, because I think it's a really important subject. If I catch the replay and it seems like the audio was good enough, from the sounds of it, it wasn't. It just got tinny. L Browning is saying. And then Nefer's saying you could hear it. Don't worry, it was just a little bit low at times. Okay. All right. I'm gonna trust that it was okay. But if for any reason it wasn't, I'll just do it again. Either way, we're going live again on Sunday. I'm going live again on Sunday. So the intent, if you missed it, is Sundays at 1 p.m. Eastern and Tuesdays at 1 p.m. No, I'm sorry. I'm getting that wrong. Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern and Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. So forgive me. I at the top of the call, because I did Sunday the other day just to sort of kick things off, and I had Sunday in my head. Our schedule moving forward will be Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern. That is for the foreseeable future. If there's any changes to that, I'll let you know in advance, certainly via email. So if you're not on the email list, there's a free gifts section below the video where you can opt in for some free gifts, and that gets you on my email list, and you'll be kept alerted to anything having to do with up and coming announcements, changes, etc. So be sure to get on that email list if you want to stay abreast of what's happening. And Erlerscher is saying, it is. This subject hit me hard in the feels and memories. I almost failed high school because a teacher did something similar to me. I still have nightmares. My fiance wakes me up from them. So first of all, I'm very sorry that happened to you. You know, we carry the trauma for real, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and physically. So I'm going to encourage you to do whatever you can to get yourself into some sort of formal healing program. There's a lot of ways to do that, both paid and free. If you can't afford to invest in a therapeutic process or a coaching program for yourself, then 12-step recovery is free, and it can take you quite far. Programs like CODA, Al-Anon, ACOA. You're surrounded by people who are living in the solution, the program, the literature, the actual program that you work through is life-changing and very powerful. So I would highly encourage you one way or another. Ursh, thank you. Thank you. I would highly encourage you one way or another to do something to support yourself in terms of your healing. You do not have to carry this ongoing. You do not have to carry this ongoing. Okay. I'm getting all the thumbs up now, so I guess whatever I did there. Thank you, Irf. That's very kind. So much love back to you. I take that right into my heart. Thank you. Thank you. Grammys Pajamas, if you're still on, if you want a transcript of this, send me an email. I can't post a transcript of this, but I can certainly get one transcribed and email it to you. So send me an email, and if I receive an email from you, I'll do that. All right. No questions. Are we good? All right. You are so welcome. Thank you for joining me live today. If ever you're interested in learning more about how you can work with me in one of my coaching programs, I've got a new offering coming out in a couple of weeks, which is quite interesting. But the Freedom Classes has been available for years and will continue to be available for you. We have 3 levels of support in the Freedom Class, and that's specific to healing and recovery from codependency and narcissistic abuse. The Ascension class is all about personal growth and development, identity shifting, reality creation, healing your money mindset. 2 levels of support offered there. And then Boundary Brilliance, the link to that is in the description below this video. That's a low ticket item, but a PhD in setting healthy limits and boundaries, in particular with difficult and toxic people in your life. So check that out if that's of interest. And again, there's a free gift section below this video as well. So thank you to each and every one of you who showed up and contributed to our live today. I send you all so much love. Again, moving forward, Fridays, Tuesdays, Fridays, Tuesdays, Fridays, Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. If you have any questions, you can email Tamie at tamiemcoaching.com. Mwah. So much love. Bye for now.